The text message from Mom made my blood run cold. Carrie's done something with Grandma's inheritance money. Come home now. I'm Stephanie, and at 28, I thought I was finally breaking free from my brother's shadow. Guess I was wrong. The drive home felt like entering a battlefield. Mom was waiting on the front porch, wringing her hands. Never a good sign. Before I could even get out of my car, she rushed down the steps. He transferred it all, she blurted out. Every penny of Grandma's inheritance. He convinced the lawyer it was what she wanted. What? My voice came out sharper than intended. How is that even possible? Your brother can be persuasive when he wants something. Mom's eyes darted away, the same look she'd given me throughout childhood whenever Carrie got his way. I pushed past her into the house, my heels clicking against the hardwood floors Grandma had loved so much. The family photos lining the hallway seemed to mock me. Carrie's graduation, Carrie's wedding, Carrie's first business venture. And there, almost hidden behind the others, a single photo of me. Where is he? I demanded. At the country club with Ivy. Mom's voice trembled. Stephanie, please don't. Don't what, Mom? Don't make a scene? Don't upset precious Carrie? I spun around to face her. That money was meant for both of us. Grandma specifically said, I know, honey, I know. My phone buzzed. A text from Carrie. Hey sis, heard you're at Mom's. Join us for drinks? Ivy and I have exciting news. Exciting news, I muttered. I bet. Mom touched my arm. Maybe you should go. Talk to him calmly. Fine, I grabbed my purse. But I'm not promising calm. The country club was Carrie's natural habitat, all polished marble and fake smiles. I spotted them immediately, Carrie in his designer suit, Ivy draped over him like expensive jewelry. Stephanie, Carrie's voice boomed across the lobby. Perfect timing. I plastered on my best fake smile. Carrie, Ivy. We just closed on our dream house, Ivy squealed, flashing her massive engagement ring. The one on Maple Drive. My stomach dropped. Maple Drive, the most expensive street in town. The pieces clicked into place. Congratulations, I managed. Must have cost a fortune. Carrie's smile widened. Sometimes opportunities just fall into your lap, right, sis? Like Grandma's inheritance? The words shot out before I could stop them. His expression didn't even flicker. Oh, that? Just following her wishes. She always said the money should go to expanding the family business. Your business, I corrected. The one that's failed 3 times. 4th time's the charm. He laughed, but his eyes were cold. Besides, what would you have done with it? Open another failed boutique? Ivy shifted uncomfortably. Carrie, maybe we should— No, let him talk. I leaned forward. Tell me more about Grandma's wishes, the ones she apparently only shared with you. Look, Steph. Carrie's voice dropped to a whisper. We both know you were never good with money. I'm doing you a favor. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. Several heads turned our way. A favor? My voice shook. You stole my inheritance to buy a house with your trophy wife, and you're calling it a favor. Keep your voice down, Carrie hissed. You're embarrassing yourself. No, you've done enough embarrassing for both of us. I grabbed my purse. Enjoy your house, Carrie. I hope it was worth it. As I stormed out, I heard Ivy ask, What inheritance? Good question, Ivy. Very good question. Back in my car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My phone buzzed with a text from Reginald, my oldest friend. Heard what happened. Come over. I might have some interesting information about your sister-in-law's finances. I stared at the message, a plan already forming in my mind. Carrie had always been the golden child, the successful one, the one who could do no wrong. But maybe it was time for little sister to step out of the shadows. I started the car, a smile playing on my lips. Carrie wasn't the only Sullivan who could be persuasive when they wanted something. Game on, big brother. Game on. Reginald's apartment always smelled like coffee and old books. Tonight, it also reeked of opportunity. "You're not going to believe this," he said, spinning his laptop around. "Ivy's been keeping secrets from your brother." I leaned forward, squinting at the screen. "A private savings account?" "With quite a healthy balance." Reginald tapped the screen. "Nearly identical to your inheritance, actually. Funny coincidence, isn't it?" "How did you even find this?" "I handle accounts at the bank, remember?" He shrugged. "Ivy came in last week acting nervous, started asking about hidden accounts and wire transfers. Got me curious." I sank into his leather couch. "Carrie has no idea, does he?" "Not a clue. He thinks she's completely dependent on him." Reginald's eyes sparkled. "But here's the interesting part. She's been siphoning money from her family's business for years. It's all perfectly legal, but Carrie would lose his mind if he knew." I finished my coffee, mind racing. He's always bragging about being the breadwinner. My phone buzzed. A text from Anne, my former business mentor. "Heard about the inheritance. Come by the shop tomorrow. Have a proposition for you." Speaking of business, I showed Reginald the text. He raised an eyebrow. "Anne Steele? The woman who owns half the boutiques downtown?" "The very same." I stood up, suddenly energized. "I need to go, but first, can you get me more details about Ivy's account?" "Stephanie." His voice held a warning. "What are you planning?" "Nothing illegal." I grabbed my purse. "Just a little karmic redistribution." The next morning, Anne's boutique was already bustling with customers. She waved me into her office, closing the door behind us. "You look terrible," she said bluntly. "Thanks, it's been a rough week." "I know, that's why I called." She pulled out a folder. "Remember that business plan you showed me last year? The one about sustainable fashion?" I nodded. It had been my dream project before Carrie's last investment opportunity had drained my savings. "I want to back it." Anne slid the folder across her desk. "Full funding, my connections, everything." My heart skipped. "What's the catch?" "No catch. Just tired of watching talent go to waste." She leaned back. "But I need you all in. No distractions, no family drama." I opened the folder, scanning the numbers. They were better than I'd imagined. "There's just one problem," I said slowly. "I need startup capital immediately, before you'll see any returns." "That's not how I work." "I know." I met her eyes. "But I have a plan, a way to get the initial investment myself." Anne studied me for a long moment. "Does this plan have anything to do with your brother?" "Indirectly." I hesitated. "What if I told you I could access funds equal to what he stole from me?" "I'd say be careful." She stood up. "But I'd also say karma's a beautiful thing." Back home, I called Reginald. "I've got the account details," he said without preamble. "But Stephanie, this is risky." "Riskier than what Carrie did to me?" "Different kind of risk." He sighed. "The transfer would be legal. You just need Ivy's authorization. But if she finds out, she won't." I paced my living room. "Not until it's too late. Not until I've built something Carrie can't tear down." "You sound like him when you talk like that." The words stung, but I pushed through. "No, I sound like someone who's finally fighting back. Can you help me or not?" "I'll send you the forms." His voice softened. "Just promise me you know what you're doing." "Trust me," I said, watching the sunset paint my walls gold. For once in my life, I know exactly what I'm doing. My phone lit up with a text from Mom. "Family dinner next month. Carrie and Ivy want to show off the new house. Please come." Perfect timing. I typed back a quick, "Wouldn't miss it." Opening my laptop, I pulled up the business plan I'd shown Anne, the one Carrie had laughed at last year. Nobody wants sustainable fashion in this town, he'd said. Stick to what you know, nothing. Well, big brother, I thought as I started updating the numbers, let's see who's laughing at the next family dinner. I worked late into the night, fueled by coffee and determination. When I finally went to bed, I dreamed of revenge served on a silver platter, garnished with success and just a hint of poetic justice. Tomorrow, I'd start the process of accessing Ivy's account. By the time anyone realized what had happened, I'd have transformed her hidden savings into a thriving business, one that would make Carrie's latest venture look like a child's lemonade stand. Sometimes karma needs a little push, and I was ready to push hard. Sign here and here, Reginald pointed at the forms. Remember, you're technically acting as Ivy's proxy. My hand trembled slightly as I forged her signature. 3 weeks had passed since discovering her secret account, and everything was falling into place. How long until the transfer completes? 24 hours. He glanced around his empty office. After that, you'll have access to the full amount. I slid the papers back across his desk. And you're sure this will work? As long as you move fast. He lowered his voice. The boutique lease is ready? Anne pulled strings. I get the keys tomorrow. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. Speaking of which, the downtown storefront was everything I'd dreamed of. Floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed brick walls, and enough space to showcase my entire sustainable fashion line. Anne met me outside, keys dangling from her finger. Your contractors can start Monday, she said, unlocking the door. We'll have you ready for a soft opening in 6 weeks. Perfect timing for the family dinner. Anne shot me a look. You're really going to reveal everything then? Why not? Carrie loves an audience. I ran my hand along the smooth counter. He should appreciate the dramatic flair. My phone buzzed. Carrie calling. I let it go to voicemail. Still avoiding him? Anne asked. Just focusing on what matters. I pulled out my tablet showing her the designs. The first collection is ready for production. Sustainable materials, local manufacturing. Everything he said wouldn't work. Anne smiled. You know, revenge looks good on you. The next few weeks passed in a blur. I threw myself into the work, barely sleeping. The money from Ivy's account funded everything: inventory, renovations, marketing. Every decision felt like a step closer to victory. One afternoon, while overseeing the installation of display cases, Mom called. Carrie's bragging about some big announcement at dinner next week, she said. Something about expanding his business nationally. Is he now? I watched workers hang my store's sign. Evolved, sustainable style. Well, I might have some news, too. Stephanie? Mom's voice turned cautious. Please don't start anything. Me? Never. I ended the call as Reginald walked in, whistling low. This place looks amazing, he said, turning slowly. But we have a problem. My stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Ivy came to the bank today, asked about account statements. Did she notice? Not yet, but she will. He grabbed my arm. You need to launch before she does. I nodded, already pulling up my contacts. Anne, we need to move up the opening. How fast can you get your people here? The next 5 days were chaos. I barely slept, coordinating deliveries, training staff, finalizing details. Every time my phone rang, I expected it to be Ivy, or worse, Carrie, but the calls never came. The night before the family dinner, I stood in my completed store. The lights were dim, but I could see everything clearly. The carefully curated collections, the eco-friendly packaging, the sleek displays. My dream built with Carrie's stolen inheritance money, funded by his wife's secret savings. Reginald appeared beside me. Ready for tomorrow? Almost. I handed him an invitation. Grand opening next week. I want you there. Wouldn't miss it. He paused. You know this could all blow up in your face. Worth it. I locked the store's front door. Besides, Carrie taught me well. Sometimes you have to take big risks. At home, I laid out my outfit for dinner, a piece from my own collection, of course. The price tag was still attached, higher than anything Carrie would expect his little sister to afford. My phone lit up with a text from Ivy. Excited to see you tomorrow. Carrie's been so mysterious about his announcement. I smiled, typing back. Can't wait. I have some exciting news too. Setting my alarm, I tried to sleep but couldn't. Tomorrow would change everything. Carrie would finally see me as competition, not just his kid sister who needed saving. Ivy would discover her missing savings, transformed into something she'd never imagined. And me? I'd finally step out of the shadows, proving that sometimes the best revenge isn't just success, it's success built on someone else's secrets. The last thing I saw before falling asleep was my store's logo, glowing on my phone screen. Tomorrow, the real game would begin. And this time, I was playing to win. Carrie and Ivy's new house was exactly what you'd expect. All marble countertops and crystal chandeliers. The kind of place that screamed, "Look how much money we have." "Stephanie!" Ivy rushed to hug me. "That outfit is gorgeous. Is it designer?" "Something like that." I smoothed the sustainable silk dress. You could say I'm intimately familiar with the brand. Mom appeared from the kitchen, tension written all over her face. "Carrie's just opening the wine. Come help me with the appetizers." In the kitchen, Carrie was holding court, champagne bottle in hand. "The expansion plans are already in motion. By next quarter, we'll have offices in 3 states. Fascinating." I grabbed a cheese plate. "And the funding?" His smile flickered. "All taken care of. Speaking of which, sis, how's the job hunt going?" "Oh, I've been busy with a new venture myself." "Really?" He popped the cork. "Another boutique idea?" Before I could respond, Ivy called everyone to the dining room. The table was set with what looked like new china, probably bought with my inheritance money. "Before we eat," Carrie stood raising his glass, "I have an announcement. Here we go. Thanks to some recent investments," he glanced at me, "our company is going national. We've just secured the Maple Drive property for our headquarters." Mom gasped. "The whole building?" "All 6 floors." Carrie beamed. "And that's not all. Ivy, honey, show them." Ivy stretched out her hand, displaying a massive new diamond ring. "Carrie surprised me with it yesterday, an early anniversary gift." My grip tightened on my water glass. That ring probably cost as much as my first inventory order. "How generous," I managed. "Must have been expensive." "When you're successful," Carrie winked, "money's just a tool." "Speaking of tools," I muttered under my breath. "What was that, sis?" I said, "Speaking of success." I reached for my phone. "Maybe now's a good time to share my news." Carrie's phone buzzed before I could continue. His face lit up as he read the message. "Hold that thought, Steph. Everyone, the deal just closed. We're officially taking over the Wilson account." Mom clapped. Ivy squealed. I felt my moment slipping away. "That's wonderful, dear," Mom gushed. "Isn't it wonderful, Stephanie?" "Thrilling." I pushed my food around. "Almost as thrilling as embezzlement." The table went quiet. "What did you say?" Carrie's voice was dangerously low. "Nothing." I smiled sweetly, just thinking out loud about financial management. Ivy shifted in her seat. "Maybe we should talk about something else." "Why?" I leaned forward. "Afraid of discussing money, Ivy? Or just certain accounts?" "Stephanie," Mom warned. Carrie stood up, his chair scraping the floor. "If you have something to say it." "Not yet." I stood too, gathering my purse. "But soon, very soon." "Where are you going?" Mom called after me. "To finish setting up my new store. You know, the one Carrie thinks is just another failed boutique idea." Store? Ivy's voice cracked. What store? I paused at the door. You should come to the opening next week, both of you. I think you'll find the funding story particularly interesting. Carrie's face reddened. What are you playing at? Me? I'm just following your example, big brother, using money as a tool. I opened the door. Oh, and Ivy, you might want to check your bank statements. The look of confusion on her face was priceless. The panic starting to dawn in Carrie's eyes was even better. Outside, my phone exploded with texts. Mom, what have you done? Carrie, this isn't over. Reginald, Ivy just called the bank. Anne, store's ready. Time to light the fuse. I drove straight to Evolved, unlocking the front door and breathing in the smell of new clothes and fresh paint. In less than a week, this place would be full of customers and questions and revelations. My phone rang. Ivy. Hey, sis. I answered cheerfully. Something wrong with your accounts? How did you... She stopped. What did you do? Why don't you ask your husband about stealing inheritances? Then maybe we can talk about missing savings. I hung up as another text came through, this one from Carrie. You're making a big mistake. No, big brother. The mistake was thinking you could keep me in the shadows forever. The real show hasn't even started yet. I turned on the store lights, watching them reflect off the windows. Tomorrow, the local business magazine would run their feature on Evolved. Sustainable fashion meets local innovation. Carrie's expansion news wouldn't seem quite so impressive then. Sometimes revenge is best served under bright lights, with a side of public humiliation. The magazine hit newsstands at 7 a.m. By 8, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Have you seen it? Anne's voice was gleeful. Your brother's going to lose his mind. I held up the glossy pages, admiring the spread. The photographer had captured Evolved perfectly. Modern, elegant, sustainable. The headline read, Local designer revolutionizes fashion scene with $1 million investment. Page 6 is my favorite, Anne continued, where they compare your projected earnings to other local businesses, including Carrie's company. My other line beeped, Mom calling. Again. I have to go, I told Anne. The fallout's starting. I switched calls. Hi, Mom. The magazine, Stephanie? Really? She sounded tired. Carrie's been calling all morning. Ivy's hysterical. Why? Because someone finally beat him at his own game? Because her savings are gone, Mom's voice cracked. How could you? A sharp knock interrupted us. Through the store's windows, I saw Ivy standing outside, clutching the magazine. I'll call you back. I opened the door. Ivy stormed in, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floors. You stole my money. She slapped the magazine down on the counter. My private savings. Like Carrie stole my inheritance? That was different. She ran her hands through her hair. That money was my security, my backup plan. Backup plan? I raised an eyebrow. Trouble in paradise? Don't. She glanced around the store, taking in the displays. How did you even access the account? The same way Carrie accessed Grandma's money, carefully planned paperwork. I moved behind the counter. Though I have to ask, does my brother know about your little embezzlement scheme? Ivy paled. You wouldn't. Try me. Look, she lowered her voice. We can fix this. I won't press charges if you return the money. I laughed. Return it? It's all here. I gestured around the store. Invested in inventory, equipment, marketing, just like Carrie invested my inheritance in your house. That house is our future. And this store is mine. I picked up the magazine. By the way, have you read page 6? The part about projected earnings? She grabbed the magazine, flipping pages frantically. Her eyes widened. This can't be right. These numbers are completely accurate. I smiled. Turns out sustainable fashion is pretty profitable. Who knew? Carrie will destroy you. Carrie can try. I walked to the door. But first, he'll have to explain to you why he needed your secret savings to fund his expansion. What are you talking about? Check his business accounts, the timing of certain transfers. I held the door open, and maybe ask him about the Wilson account he was so excited about last night. Ivy's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowning. That's probably the bank, I said. They're very thorough with their fraud investigations. Fraud? Her voice shook. Well, what else would you call using embezzled money to fund a business expansion? I shrugged. But hey, I'm sure Carrie can explain everything. She rushed out, already dialing. Through the window, I watched her pace the sidewalk, gesturing wildly. My phone pinged with a text from Reginald. Carrie's at the bank. He knows. Perfect timing. I typed back. How long until he figures out the Wilson account connection? Minutes, maybe less. Another text came through, this one from Carrie. My office, now. I smiled, grabbing my purse. Time for the final act. The elevator ride to Carrie's office felt like ascending to a showdown. His secretary took one look at me and pointed to his door. You've lost your mind, he said as I entered. Funny, I was about to say the same thing about your expansion plans. I sat down uninvited. Using Ivy's stolen money? That's risky, even for you. You don't know what you're talking about. No, I pulled out my phone. Should we call the Wilson account managers? Ask them about the mysterious funding that appeared right after you accessed Ivy's account? Carrie's face went from red to white. How did you? The same way I knew about the inheritance theft. I stood up. The difference is, I'm not hiding my moves. You're bluffing. Check your phone. On cue, it buzzed. He read the message, swearing under his breath. The Wilson account just pulled out, didn't they? I moved to the door. Funny how quickly things fall apart when people start asking questions about money. You've ruined everything. No, Carrie, I just played by your rules. I paused in the doorway. Oh, and don't forget, store openings next week. Bring Ivy. We can discuss family business. As I left, I heard him throwing something across the room. My phone lit up with another text from Reginald. Ivy's asking questions about the expansion funding. Game, set, match. The morning of Evolved's grand opening, I arrived early to find Carrie waiting outside. Cute store, he said, voice dripping with sarcasm, though I'm surprised you had the guts to show up today. Why? Because Ivy's lawyers are circling? I unlocked the door. Or because your expansion plans fell through? He followed me inside. You have no idea what you've done. Actually, I do. I flipped on the lights, illuminating the packed racks and gleaming displays. I built something real, unlike your house of cards. Is that what you think this is? He gestured around. You stole my wife's money to play dress-up. Like you stole my inheritance to play businessman? I checked my watch. Speaking of Ivy, where is she? Meeting with divorce lawyers. That made me pause. What? Congratulations, sis. Carrie's laugh was hollow. You didn't just ruin my business. You ruined my marriage. Before I could respond, Mom burst through the door. Stop this. She looked between us. Both of you, just stop. Mom, we both started. No, she held up her hand. I've watched you two destroy each other for years. But this, using Ivy, stealing money, what would Grandma say? Ask Carrie, I snapped. He's the one who... Who what? A new voice cut in. Ivy stood in the doorway, looking exhausted. Who stole from family first? Does it even matter anymore? She walked in slowly, touching the clothes as she passed. You know what's funny? This stuff is actually good. Really good. Ivy, Carrie stepped toward her. Don't. She turned to me. You were right about the Wilson account. About all of it. Carrie's face darkened. We can explain. Explain what? Ivy's voice rose. How you used my savings to fund your expansion? Or how you knew about my family's money all along? Mom sank into a nearby chair. Carrie, what is she talking about? He knew, Ivy said quietly, about the money I took from my family's business. He helped me hide it. And then helped himself to it, I added. Shut up. Carrie slammed his fist on a display table. Several hangers rattled. Or what? I stepped closer. You'll steal from me again? Frame me for something? Face it, Carrie, you're not in control anymore. Neither are you. He pulled out his phone. One call to the police about Ivy's stolen money. Go ahead. Ivy crossed her arms. Tell them how you facilitated embezzlement. I'm sure your investors would love to hear that story. The store fell silent. Outside, I could see people gathering for the opening. So what now? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Now, I moved to unlock the front door. I opened my store, built with Carrie's stolen inheritance, funded by Ivy's hidden savings. Poetic justice, don't you think? You're just like him, Mom said. No, I turned back. I'm better because I'm not hiding what I did. Every penny is accounted for, invested in something real. She's right, Ivy said suddenly. At least she built something. All we did was buy things. Carrie's phone buzzed again. His face fell as he read the message. The board wants an emergency meeting. He looked up, defeated. They know about the Wilson account. Of course they do. I checked my lipstick in a mirror. I sent them the proof this morning. You what? Along with documentation about Ivy's money? I smiled. I learned from the best, remember? Always keep receipts. The crowd outside was growing. Anne appeared at the door, giving me a thumbs up. You should go, I told Carrie. Your board's waiting. Oh, and you might want to call your realtor. That house on Maple Drive might be a bit out of your price range soon. He stormed out, shoulder-checking a mannequin on his way. I'll talk to him, Mom sighed, following. Ivy lingered, looking lost. What happens now? Now? I handed her a business card. You call my lawyer. She specializes in financial fraud cases. Maybe we can work something out. Why would you help me? Because unlike Carrie, I know the difference between revenge and destruction. I straightened a display. Besides, someone needs to testify about where all that money really went. She nodded slowly, tucking the card into her purse. Your grandmother would be proud, you know. Not of how you did it, but of this. She gestured at the store. I know. I moved to open the doors. That's why I did it. As Ivy left, Anne appeared beside me. Ready? I looked around my store. My dream built on stolen dreams. My success funded by others' secrets. Ready? The doors opened and the crowd poured in. Outside, I could see Carrie in his car, watching. Let him watch. Let him see what his little sister could really do. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's success they can't look away from. 3 months after Evolved's opening, I sat across from Ivy in a downtown coffee shop, sliding a check across the table. First quarter profits, I said. Your share, as agreed. She stared at the amount. This is more than I expected. Turns out, sustainable fashion sells better than Carrie's real estate schemes. I sipped my latte. Speaking of which, the divorce is final next week. Ivy twisted her wedding ring. The house is on the market. And the board meeting? They voted him out yesterday. She looked up. Did you know that would happen? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Reginald. Carrie's here at the bank, making threats. Excuse me. I stood up. I need to handle something. The bank was only 2 blocks away. I found Carrie in Reginald's office, red-faced and shouting. You helped her destroy me. Lower your voice, Reginald said calmly, or I'll call security. Don't bother, I stepped in. He's leaving. Carrie spun around. You? You think you've won? Won what? I perched on Reginald's desk. The game you started? The one where you stole my inheritance? I was protecting you. No, I stood up straight. You were controlling me, like you controlled Ivy, like you tried to control everything. And now look, he gestured wildly. The company's gone, the house is gone, Ivy's gone. But your freedom isn't. I moved closer. Yet, unless you want me to press charges about the inheritance fraud? His face paled. You wouldn't. Try me. I pulled out my phone. I have the lawyer on speed dial. The fight seemed to drain out of him. He sank into a chair, suddenly looking older. What do you want? Sign over your remaining shares in Evolved. I'd given him a minority stake as part of our settlement. Walk away completely. That's worth less than jail time, I finished. Choose wisely, big brother. Reginald silently slid the paperwork across his desk. Carrie stared at it for a long moment. You really did it, he said quietly. Built something real. No thanks to you. He signed the papers without another word. As he stood to leave, he paused. Mom wants us all for dinner next week. I'll think about it. After he left, Reginald let out a low whistle. That was intense, but necessary. I gathered the signed documents. How's the new account looking? He pulled up the numbers on his screen. Evolved's growth is steady. You'll be able to open the second location ahead of schedule. My phone buzzed again, and this time. Get back here, she said when I answered. The investors are early. The store was packed when I arrived. Anne had arranged a meeting with potential investors for our expansion plans. There she is, Anne waved me over. I was just showing them the sales projections. Impressive numbers, one investor said, especially for a first-time entrepreneur. I had good motivation. I launched into my pitch, the one I'd practiced countless times. But this time, it wasn't just a dream. It was backed by solid success. Halfway through, I spotted Mom through the window, hovering uncertainly outside. I excused myself. I wasn't sure if I should come in, she said when I opened the door. Why not? It's a store, Mom. Open to everyone. She looked around, taking in the bustling atmosphere. I saw Carrie today. So did I. He told me what happened at the bank. She touched a silk blouse. Is this really what you wanted? To take everything from him? No. I straightened a display. I wanted what was rightfully mine. He's the one who made it about taking things. And Ivy? Is better off. I checked my watch. Look, Mom, I have investors waiting. Of course. She started to leave, then turned back. Your grandmother would have handled this differently. Maybe. I met her eyes. But she's not here because of choices Carrie made. Mom flinched. Dinner next week? I'll bring dessert. Back inside, the investors were ready with their decision. Anne's smile told me everything I needed to know. Congratulations! The lead investor extended his hand. We'd love to be part of Evolved's future. As I shook his hand, I caught my reflection in the store window. I looked different, stronger, more confident. No longer the little sister living in anyone's shadow. My phone lit up with a final text from Ivy. Thank you for everything. Sometimes revenge doesn't end the way you expect. Sometimes it opens doors you never knew existed. And sometimes, just sometimes, it helps you evolve into exactly who you were meant to be. The family dinner felt different this time. Mom had set the table with regular plates instead of Grandma's china. Carrie sat quietly, picking at his food. Ivy's empty chair spoke volumes. The meatloaf is good, I offered, breaking the silence. Your grandmother's recipe, Mom said softly. Carrie's fork clattered against his plate. Can we not? Not what? I set down my glass. Talk about Grandma? Or about how you used her money? Stephanie, Mom warned. No, let's talk about it. Carrie pushed his plate away. You got what you wanted, right? The store, the investors, everything. I got what I earned. I leaned forward. The difference is, I built something real, something that helps people. By stealing from Ivy? By giving her a way out. I pulled an envelope from my purse. Speaking of which, I slid it across the table. Carrie opened it, his eyes widening at the check inside. What's this? Your half of Grandma's inheritance, plus interest. I watched his face. I'm not you, Carrie. I don't need to keep what isn't mine. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Stephanie, the store's doing well enough to pay it back. I turned to her, and there's something else. I pulled out a second envelope. Grandma's house. I bought it back from the bank. But Carrie sold it months ago, Mom whispered, and now it's yours again. I handed her the deed. No strings attached. Carrie stood up abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. Why are you doing this? Because someone needs to break the cycle. I stood too. And because Grandma taught me that family means more than money. Even after everything I did? Especially after everything you did. I moved to the window, looking out at the garden Grandma had loved. You taught me how to fight, Carrie, but she taught me how to forgive. The doorbell rang. Mom answered it, returning with Ivy. Sorry I'm late, she said, hovering in the doorway. I brought dessert. Carrie started to leave, but I caught his arm. Stay, please. We all sat down again, the tension thick but different now. Ivy served her apple pie. Grandma's recipe, I realized with a start. I have news, she said, cutting slices. The investigation into my family's business is over, no charges. Because of your testimony? Carrie asked quietly. She nodded. And because of Stephanie's help. The lawyer I recommended, I explained, she specialized in financial restitution. Speaking of restitution, Carrie pulled out the check I'd given him. I can't accept this. You can. I pushed it back. Use it to start over, the right way this time. I don't deserve. It's not about deserving. I cut him off. It's about choosing to be better. Mom reached for both our hands. Your grandmother would be proud of both of you. Both? Carrie looked skeptical. You're here, aren't you? I smiled slightly. Facing what you did, that's a start. Ivy served the pie, and slowly the conversation shifted. We talked about Evolved's expansion plans, about Carrie's job interviews, about Mom's garden. Real things, honest things. As the evening wound down, Carrie pulled me aside. I never said I was sorry, he said, for any of it. I know. I was so focused on winning, on being the successful one. He trailed off. That you forgot how to just be a brother? He nodded, looking down at the check in his hand. I don't know how to fix this. Start by fixing yourself. I touched his arm. The rest will follow. Later, standing in Grandma's garden with Mom and Ivy, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly. That would take time. But understanding, maybe. The kind that comes from seeing the whole board, not just your own moves. What happens now? Mom asked, pruning a rose bush. Now? I looked at the house, at Carrie through the window, at the family we were trying to rebuild. Now we grow, together. Ivy squeezed my hand. Like your store? Like everything, I smiled. One piece at a time. The evening air was sweet with roses, Grandma's roses, blooming again after all this time. Some things, I realized, never really die. They just wait for the right moment to return, stronger than before. My phone buzzed with a message from Anne. Second location's ready when you are. I typed back, tomorrow, tonight's for family. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's showing them a better way. Sometimes it's coming home.
I'm Lena. My world used to be pretty decent, with my mom, Jane, being the cool optometrist in town and my dad, Richard, playing the hotshot plastic surgeon. Our house was always buzzing, either with mom's gentle guidance or dad's big tales of making people beautiful. "Lena, pass those files, will ya?" Mom would call out during her sessions at home. I loved being her sidekick, feeling kinda important in our little clinic world. Dad was another story. He'd breeze in, all charm and stories about his latest masterpiece surgeries. "You know, beauty ain't just about what you see," Mom would hit back, trying to teach me something deeper. I didn't get all their jabs at each other, but I felt the chill in the air. Our dinners were a mix of medicine talk and Dad's bragging, till he started coming home late, the air thick with unsaid stuff. "Late work again?" Mom would dig, her voice sharp. "Someone's gotta do the real work around here, Jane," Dad snapped one evening, colder than ever. Mom's face would tighten, but she kept her words locked up. Then, the storm hit. Dad had been messing around with his much younger assistant. The day he decided to bail, he packed up like he was just heading off to another conference, not leaving his whole life behind. "Richard, how can you just walk out on us?" Mom tried to fight, her voice all shaky. "It's not you, it's me. Look after your mom, Lena," he said, barely glancing my way. His advice felt like a slap. Wasn't he supposed to be the one looking after us? What followed was a nightmare. Mom dove headfirst into a depression so bad, it felt like she'd vanished. We had to ditch our home for a cramped apartment, all cause Dad decided he wanted the house for himself and his new chick. "Why's he doing this, Mom?" I couldn't wrap my head around the mess. "People change, Lena. Or maybe they just show their true colors. We'll get through," she whispered, but it was like talking to a ghost. She was out of it, barely holding on. We were sinking fast, and then came my grandparents, throwing us a lifeline with all the love and backup we needed. "Your mom's stronger than she knows, Lena. We'll help her back on her feet," Grandpa would say, him and Grandma standing like two pillars by our side. They never trash-talked Dad, but the lesson was clear: family's what you have when the world turns its back. Then came the final blow. Dad wanted the house, all for himself and his new family. Mom was too beaten down to fight, nearly letting him have it all. But then, my grandparents stepped in, guns blazing. They hired a lawyer who fought tooth and nail, managing to claw back half the house's value. That house got sold, and with that money, Mom could afford a small apartment for us. Life took a nosedive after Dad bolted. Mom, once vibrant and full of life, became a shell of herself. Our new digs? A cramped apartment that felt more like a box than a home. The shift from our comfortable life to this was like night to day, and not in a good way. Mom's clinic work dried up. She'd stare at the phone as if willing it to ring, but it sat silent, a mocking reminder of how far we'd fallen. The days she managed to drag herself to the clinic were victories, but they were few and far between. "Lena, breakfast," she'd call out on her good days, her voice lacking its usual warmth. I knew those days. It meant she was trying, for me. I'd shuffle into the kitchen, finding her staring out the window, coffee untouched. "You okay, Mom?" I'd ask, even though I knew the answer. "I'm fine, honey. Just tired," she'd lie, plastering on a weak smile that didn't reach her eyes. School became my escape. It was there I could pretend everything was normal, that my family wasn't crumbling. But kids talk, and it wasn't long before whispers of my dad's affair and our fall from grace reached my ears. "Hey, Lena, heard your dad left 'cause he got tired of your mom. That true?" Jack, a kid with too much mouth and too little sense, sneered one day. "Shut it, Jack. You don't know anything," I'd snap back, fists clenched. I learned to fight with words, my tongue as sharp as any knife. At home, the silence was deafening. Mom and we were like two ghosts, passing each other in a fog of sadness. But then, Grandma and Grandpa stepped in. They were our rock, refusing to let us sink further. "Jane, you can't let this beat you. You're stronger than this," Grandpa would say, his voice firm yet filled with concern. I know, Dad. It's just hard, Mom would respond, her voice a whisper, her spirit broken. Hard? Life's always hard. It's about getting up, dusting yourself off, and going again. Lena needs you. Grandma would chime in, no nonsense as ever. Their visits brought light into our dim world. They helped with bills, groceries, and most of all, they brought hope. Hope that things could get better, that we weren't alone. Lena, why don't you help me with this? Grandma would say, handing me a recipe. Cooking became our therapy, a way to bridge the gap the silence had created. I watched Mom slowly, ever so slowly, start to come back to life. She began seeing patients again, her clinic's phone starting to ring with life. It was a slow climb, but we were making it, step by step. You think you can handle school and helping me at the clinic? Mom asked one day, her eyes holding a spark I hadn't seen in ages. Yeah, Mom, I can. Let's do this, I said, my voice more confident than I felt. But I was ready to fight, ready to help us move forward. The struggles were real, but they made us stronger. The betrayal, the hurt, it was all part of our story, but it wasn't the end. It was just a chapter, one that taught us about resilience, about fighting back when life knocks you down. Then my grandparents died quietly one after the other. They left us a legacy, a bittersweet gift that propelled us into a new chapter. With it, Mom found the strength to open her own ophthalmology clinic. It was a fresh start, a chance to rebuild from the ashes of our past. I'm thinking of naming it Visionary Futures, Mom announced one evening, her eyes shining with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Sounds like a superhero base, not an eye clinic, I joked, trying to lighten the mood. Mom chuckled, shaking her head. Maybe so, but it's about looking ahead, Lena. We're moving forward, not looking back. I helped set up the clinic, painting walls, assembling furniture, and sorting through endless boxes of medical supplies. It was hard work, but there was a sense of hope and purpose in the air that had been missing for too long. Lena, can you help me with this? Mom called out from the reception area. I walked over to find her struggling with the computer system we'd installed. Let me try, I said, taking over the keyboard. You know, for a tech-savvy generation, I'm pretty useless at this stuff. You're doing better than me. I still miss paper records, Mom replied with a sigh. The clinic slowly started to take shape, becoming more than just a building, it became a symbol of our resilience. We were both learning and growing, finding our footing in this new reality. Opening day arrived faster than we anticipated. Mom was a bundle of nerves, double-checking everything and pacing the floor of the clinic. What if no one shows up? What if we fail? She whispered to me, her usual confidence wavering. We won't, I said firmly, more to reassure myself than her. You're the best eye doc in town. People will come. And come they did. The clinic was busier than we ever imagined, with patients praising Mom's expertise and the warm, welcoming environment we'd created. It felt like we were finally turning a page, leaving the shadow of Dad's betrayal behind us. In the midst of all this, I started to find my own place in the clinic. I wasn't just the daughter of the owner, I was a part of the team, helping patients and learning more about ophthalmology than I ever thought possible. Lena, you have a real knack for this, Mom said one day, watching me interact with a particularly difficult patient. Have you ever thought about going into medicine yourself? I shrugged, unsure. The thought had crossed my mind, but it felt like a huge step. Maybe. I like helping people, and working here has been eye-opening, no pun intended. Mom laughed, pulling me into a hug. Whatever you decide, I'm proud of you. We've come a long way, haven't we? Yeah, we have, I agreed, looking around the busy clinic. We really have. As days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the clinic thrived. We were no longer just surviving, we were living. It wasn't always easy, and the shadow of the past sometimes loomed over us, but we faced each challenge together, stronger and more united than ever. After high school, I had this crossroads moment, you know? Mom sat me down one evening, her clinic files spread out like a sea around us. "Lena," she started, that serious tone in her voice that always made me listen up. "Have you given any thought to becoming an optometrist? You've got the brains and the heart for it." Honestly, I had tossed the idea around in my mind, playing with it like a puzzle piece, trying to find where it fit in my future. "Yeah, I've thought about it, Mom. It's just big, you know? Following in your footsteps." She smiled, that warm, reassuring smile that could light up our cramped living room. "Big, yes, but not impossible. You've been my right hand here since you could barely reach the counter. You've got this, Lena." So, I took the leap. I enrolled in medical college, diving headfirst into the world of medicine. Those years were a blur of textbooks, late-night study sessions, and more coffee than I care to admit. But I made it through, graduating with a sense of accomplishment that was both mine and a tribute to the path Mom had paved for me. I interned at her clinic, getting hands-on with everything from patient consultations to managing the inventory of lenses and frames. It was during this time I continued my medical education, never letting the dream of expanding our clinic fade into the background. Then came the International Ophthalmology Exhibition in our city. It was a big deal, and Mom had been buzzing about it for weeks. "Lena, this could be a game-changer for us," she'd said, her eyes sparkling with that familiar mix of excitement and determination. And she was right, but not just about the clinic. At the exhibition, I met Alex. He was there representing a major pharmaceutical company, and from the moment I saw him, it felt like someone had punched the air out of me. He had this easy charm, a smile that felt like it was just for me, and eyes that listened. We got to talking, first about the boring stuff, supply contracts, new drugs on the market, the usual. But then, the conversation drifted. He asked about my work at the clinic, about what it was like growing up in a family so dedicated to healthcare. "You really love it, huh? The clinic, I mean," he said, leaning in, genuinely interested. "Yeah, I do. It's more than just a job, you know? It's part of who I am," I replied, surprised at how easy it was to open up to him. He nodded, that smile never leaving his face. "I get that. It's the same for me. Passion drives us." Things moved fast after that. Alex started showing up at the clinic, under the pretense of official pharmaceutical business, but we both knew it was more. He'd bring coffee, we'd steal moments between patients to chat, and before I knew it, I was falling hard. One day, after the clinic had closed and we were alone, he turned to me, took my hands in his, and said, "Lena, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you." My heart raced, my stomach did somersaults, and all I could manage was a whispered, "I love you, too." He smiled, that now familiar smile that promised so much more. Then, "Lena, will you marry me?" It was sudden, but then, the best things in life usually are. "Yes," I said, no hesitation. "Yes, I will." The excitement of the engagement consumed us. We dove into wedding planning, our days filled with talk of dates, venues, and dresses. Life at the clinic was usually a calm sea, the kind you'd want after a storm's passed. That day, though, it felt like the storm decided to make a U-turn. I was sitting behind the reception desk, scrolling through wedding dresses on the clinic's computer, dreaming, planning. That's when the door banged open, like trouble decided to walk in on two legs, dressed in expensive clothes that screamed louder than their voices. The couple, a man and a woman, strolled in like they owned the place, eyeballing everything with a mix of disdain and superiority. The man, about 60, with an air that he breathed better air than the rest of us, was the first to break the silence. "Hey, we need to see the doc, pronto. Got no appointment, but tell her it's urgent," he barked, his voice grating against my already fraying patience. I plastered on my professional smile, the one Mom taught me for just such occasions. "I'm sorry, but we're fully booked for the next 2 weeks. I can take your number and call you if there's a cancellation?" His reaction was like I slapped him with the schedule. "What? You can't squeeze in a real doctor?" Do you even know who I am? Before I could muster a response that wouldn't get me fired, his gaze landed on my computer screen. The smirk that crawled up his face was enough to make my skin crawl. Looking at wedding dresses on the job? And look at you, thinking someone would marry that? I felt my cheeks burn, not from embarrassment but pure, boiling anger. Excuse me, but my personal time is none of your business. Now, if you don't have an appointment, I must ask you to leave. His laughter was like sandpaper to my ears. This is how you treat people here? No wonder this place looks like a dump. And you, girl, ever thought of visiting a plastic surgeon? That nose and those lips could use some work. I was about to launch myself over the desk and show him exactly what this girl could do when Mom came out. Her timing was always either perfect or disastrous, depending on how you looked at it. Her eyes widened in shock. Richard? The atmosphere turned electric. Richard, the illustrious father who'd taken a hike from our lives, looked like he'd just swallowed a bug. And who might you be? His voice was laced with feigned ignorance, but the venom was palpable. Mom's backbone turned to steel. The mother of the girl you've just insulted, she shot back, her tone slicing through the tension like a scalpel. His companion, a walking advertisement for plastic perfection, piped up. Let's go, honey. This place isn't worth our time. That's when Mom turned to me, her voice loud enough to cut through the standoff. Lena, this piece of work is your biological father. Be thankful he left, we're better off without his delightful company. The man, my so-called father, Richard, recoiled as if Mom's words were physical blows. His arrogance deflated slightly, revealing a flicker of something else. Was it guilt? Or just surprise at being confronted so directly? You can't talk to me like that, Jane. I've achieved things you wouldn't even dream of. He shot back, trying to recover his earlier bravado. Mom snorted. Achieved? Destroying families? Abandoning your daughter? If those are achievements, then yes, you're quite successful. The room felt too small for the growing tension. I stood there, rooted to the spot, watching this surreal exchange between my parents. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. You want to look away, but you just can't. Just when I thought the drama couldn't crank up any higher, Dad brushed off Mom's words like they were just pesky flies and doubled down. Look, just get the owner. My time's precious, and I'm not about to let your little clinic's reputation tank because you can't recognize importance when it's staring you in the face. Mom stood her ground, her voice calm but laced with steel. The owner? You're looking at her. And Lena here, she's not just my daughter. She's the co-owner and the future of this clinic. The look on Dad's and his new wife's faces? Priceless. Like someone had slapped them with a reality stick. Then Alex, my fiancé, sauntered in, quiet as a cat but with a presence that filled the room. Mom wasn't done, though. She launched into Dad like a missile. You left us for your assistant, stole our money, and made life a misery. But look at us now. We're standing strong, and frankly, I thank God we're rid of a nobody like you. Dad tried to puff himself up, all indignant like. Changed my mind about this place. Got my own clinic with top-notch specialists. Just needed a quick consult while on the road, that's all. That's when Alex, bless him, chimed in. Your clinic? Aren't you the same guy who botched that surgery on the Hollywood star? Got your license yanked and left drowning in lawsuits? You could practically see the steam coming off Dad. His face went from red to ghost white. That's all lies. I'm well respected in my field. Alex didn't skip a beat. Respected? The only thing you're leading in is the race to the bottom. Bankrupt, tangled in legal troubles, and now this pathetic show? Not much of a legacy. Dad just soaked it all in, face getting redder with every word, until he couldn't take it anymore. That's a load of bull. He exploded, his voice cracking under the pressure. I'm a legend in plastic surgery. My hands work magic. He gestured dramatically towards his wife, as if she was his masterpiece exhibit. Mom, Alex, and I couldn't help but take a good look at her, and, well, let's just say it wasn't a pretty sight. The work he'd done was questionable at best. Seeing our reactions, Dad's wife lost it. She hurled insults at him like grenades, her voice sharp and cutting. "Bad doctor. Bankrupt. You're a disgrace." And with that, she stormed out, leaving a silence that echoed off the clinic walls. Dad, now alone and looking smaller than I'd ever seen him, slunk off after her without another word. It was like watching the end of a sad, twisted play. After my dad and his wife made their less than graceful exit, the clinic felt lighter somehow, like we'd just aired out a room that had been closed off for too long. Mom and I shared a look, a mix of relief and disbelief. Alex stood by the reception, a silent but solid support system. "Can you believe that just happened?" I broke the silence, still reeling from the encounter. Mom let out a laugh, the tension in her shoulders easing. "Believe it? I lived it. And honestly, Lena, I'm just glad it's over." Alex came over, putting an arm around me. "You both handled that brilliantly. If that was me, I don't think I could have kept my cool." I smiled, leaning into him. "We've had a bit of practice dealing with difficult patients, but he's on another level." "Yeah, well, he's gone now. And from what I've seen, he won't be back anytime soon," Alex added, ever the optimist. Mom nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "It's strange. For so long, the thought of facing him seemed like the ultimate showdown. Now that it's happened, it feels like, I don't know, like closing a book I've been reading for too long." "That's because we're on to the next chapter," I said, feeling a surge of hope. "And this time, we're writing it on our terms." As the day wound down, I found myself staring at the door Dad had walked out of. It was just a door, but it felt symbolic, like the barrier between our past and our future. "Thinking about locking that door and throwing away the key?" Alex joked, coming up beside me. "Something like that," I admitted. "But more about all the doors that are still open for us." Mom joined us, her arm linking with mine. "He may have left a shadow here once, but we're the ones who choose what fills this place now. Love, care, and a whole lot of hard work." "Yeah, and a no jerks allowed policy," I added, earning a chuckle from both of them. As we locked up the clinic that evening, the sunset painted the sky in hues of hope and promise. The departure of shadows wasn't just about Dad leaving, it was about us stepping out from under the weight of his influence, ready to face the light of a new day. A few months down the line, the wedding bells were ringing. Me and Alex tied the knot in this cozy little ceremony. Just a bunch of our relatives and close friends, the kind of people who'd been there through thick and thin. Dad? He was nowhere in sight, which suited me just fine. The day was perfect without his shadow looming over us. Chatting with some of the docs we knew, the gossip mills were churning. Turns out Dad had crashed and burned, big time. Debts up to his eyeballs, and his last bit of property snatched away to cover some of them. And the cherry on top? A lineup of angry patients with botched jobs ready to take him to court. Karma's a real kicker, ain't it? "So, he's really tanked, huh?" I said to Mom over coffee one morning, trying not to sound too smug about it. Mom sighed, her eyes a mix of relief and something a bit softer, maybe pity. "Seems like it, Lena. But let's not dwell on it. We've got our own lives to live." "Yeah, you're right," I replied, feeling a twinge of, I don't know, something. Not exactly sadness, but close. "It's just crazy, you know? After everything." Alex, ever the voice of reason, chimed in. "Life's about moving forward, not looking back at the debris. We've got a lot to be thankful for." He was right, as usual. The wedding was a blast, a real celebration of new beginnings. And with Dad's drama finally in the rearview, it felt like we could breathe again, really breathe. "Our little family's got a bright future ahead," Mom said, her hand finding mine. "Let's focus on that." And that's exactly what we did. The clinic thrived, our marriage was full of love and laughter, and the shadow of Dad's legacy faded into nothing more than a bad memory. We were building something new, something ours, and nothing could drag us down. Looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. The hardships, the battles, they made us who we are. And standing there, with my mom and Alex by my side, I knew we were unbreakable. The past was just that, the past. Our eyes were set on the horizon, eager for the dawn of our new day. The college campus was buzzing with the kind of energy that you can only find in a place overflowing with young dreams and ambitions. That's where I met Ethan. We were both gunning for the same scholarship, the kind that not only covered tuition, but also bragging rights. It was big, it was what every nerd in our batch was after. And boy, did we clash over it. Seriously, Ethan? You think you can outdo me on the thesis? Dream on. I'd scoff at him across the library, my eyes barely lifting from my laptop. He'd just grin, that annoyingly confident smirk that drove me nuts. Ava, I'll see you at the finish line. Better bring your A game. We were both stubborn as hell, each convinced we were the rightful winner of that grant. Our debates got so heated, sometimes I thought we'd end up setting the lecture halls on fire with our arguments. Your argument on the economic theories is so half-baked, I could serve it for breakfast, Ethan once told me during a mock debate. The class had erupted in laughter, and I could feel my cheeks burning, not just from embarrassment but from the raging fire to prove him wrong. Oh, please, your so-called innovative perspective is just recycled trash. Heard it all before, Ethan, I shot back, not missing a beat. It wasn't just about the scholarship, it was a battle of wits, pride, and, unbeknownst to us at the time, a budding attraction that neither of us wanted to admit. Our rivalry was the talk of the campus. We were always at each other's throats, challenging one another to do better, be smarter. But as the final decision on the grant neared, something shifted between us. Maybe it was the late-night study sessions that ended in shared coffee breaks, or the way we'd inadvertently learn more about each other's lives beyond the books. You know, for a smartass, you're not that bad, I found myself saying one night as we left the library together, the campus quiet around us. Ethan chuckled, shoving his hands in his pockets. Look who's talking. I've seen you help the freshmen with their assignments. Not the heartless competitor everyone thinks. It was strange, this new dynamic. Our banter softened, tinged with a reluctant respect that slowly melted into something warmer. When the day of the scholarship announcement came, we sat next to each other, an unspoken truce between us. May the best man, or woman, win, Ethan whispered, his hand brushing mine. I remember the rush of emotions when they called my name. But what stood out more was the genuine smile on Ethan's face. Guess you were the best man after all, he said, his laughter mingling with mine. From that day forward, our relationship took a new turn. We were still competitive, but it was different. We challenged each other to be better, supported each other's dreams. Our arguments turned into discussions, our banter into inside jokes. And somewhere along the line, we stopped being rivals and started being something more. Moving in together was the easiest decision we'd ever made. It felt like the natural next step, a testament to how far we'd come from those two hot-headed students who couldn't stand to be in the same room unless it was to argue over academic theories. Our friends were shocked. You too? Really? They'd ask, disbelief written all over their faces. Yeah, really, we'd say, exchanging looks that spoke volumes of the journey we'd been on. From rivals to roommates to, dare I say, soulmates. Living with Ethan was like being in our little bubble. But bubbles are delicate, and ours was no exception, especially when it came to dealing with his folks. Martha and John were as traditional as they come, and our choice to live together without the whole marriage shebang didn't sit well with them. Not at all. It was like a broken record every time we saw them. You're living in sin, Ava. It's not right. Martha would start, her tone laced with disappointment and a touch of scorn. She was a pro at guilt trips, making sure to sprinkle in stories of her own purity. John and I didn't even kiss until we were married. Can you imagine? I tried to keep my cool, respect was important to me, but boy, was it hard. Martha, times have changed. People don't wait for marriage to be together anymore. It's normal. Ethan stood by me, bless him, but it was like talking to a wall with them. John would chime in, voice heavy with this sense of betrayed values. We raised you better, Ethan. You're supposed to be a decent man, not swayed by this. That's what I was to them. Never Ava, always this, as if I were some bad influence instead of the person their son loved. Ethan tried to bridge the gap. Mom, Dad, I love Ava. We're happy. Can't you just be happy for us? But nope, it was like everything he said just bounced off them. Martha, with her knack for drama, would clutch at her pearls, literally. Happy? How can we be happy when you're living in sin? It's not right, Ethan. You know it's not. The worst part? Ethan was caught in the crossfire. His folks made it seem like I had him under some spell. You've changed, son. This isn't you, John would say, shaking his head like Ethan was some puppet gone rogue. And me? I was trying not to lose it. I respected their beliefs, sure, but the constant judgment was a drag. I told Ethan as much. I get where they're coming from, but I'm not the enemy here. We're just living our lives. I know, he'd sigh, looking like he was carrying the world on his shoulders. It's just, they're my parents. I wish they could see how good we are together. In the end, it felt like we were stuck in this loop. Us trying to live our lives, them seeing it as some personal affront. It was exhausting, dealing with the endless lectures and the not-so-subtle digs at our life choices. But what could we do? They were his parents, and no amount of reasoning seemed to make a dent. So we kept on, living our sinful life, hoping one day they'd come around. Or at least, stop making every dinner feel like a trial where we were always found guilty. Just when I thought Martha and John's nagging couldn't get any worse, they hit us with a new plan. You both need guidance, Martha announced one evening, her tone more determined than ever. We've arranged for you to meet with Father Mike. He'll set you straight. Ethan and I exchanged a look. The kind that said, "Are you kidding me?" without needing words. Mom, really? We don't need a priest to tell us how to live our lives. Ethan tried to reason, his patience wearing thin. But Martha was on a mission, and when Martha got going, there was no stopping her. It's not up for discussion, Ethan. You're going, and that's final. It's for your own good. So there we were, a few days later, sitting uncomfortably in Father Mike's office, a cozy little room filled with religious books and those cliché inspirational posters. Father Mike was a kind-looking man, but the situation was just absurd. Now, I understand there's some concern about your living arrangements? Father Mike began, peering over his glasses at us. I bit my tongue, really wanting to say something snarky, but managed to keep it civil. We're fine, really. It's just that Ethan's parents are a bit traditional. Father Mike nodded, as if this wasn't the first time he'd been dragged into a family squabble. Marriage is a sacred union, but so is love and respect for one another. Are you two committed to each other? Ethan took my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Yes, we are. Completely. The priest smiled, then turned to some of his books, probably looking for some wise quote to throw at us. But before he could get into it, Ethan cut in. Look, Father, we appreciate what you're trying to do, but we're happy. Isn't that what matters? Father Mike looked at us, then, after a long pause, he closed his book. You're right. Happiness and commitment are what truly matter. Maybe it's not me who needs to guide you, but perhaps I can help your parents understand your choices. That meeting didn't magically fix everything, but it was a start. Or so we thought. Martha and John thanked Father Mike for his time, but seemed to ignore the whole happiness and commitment are what truly matter part. Instead, they focused on the sacred union bit. See? Even Father Mike agrees. You two need to get married, Martha insisted, completely missing the point. Ethan and I just looked at each other, the reality of the situation sinking in. No matter what we did, it seemed like his parents would never be satisfied. It was like banging our heads against a brick wall. "Let's just get married and get it over with," I muttered to Ethan on our way home, half joking, but also half desperate for some peace. Ethan sighed, the weight of the world on his shoulders. "I'll do anything if it means they'll finally leave us alone." Little did we know, that decision to give in would open a whole new can of worms. But at that moment, all we wanted was a break from the constant pressure. If a wedding was what it took, then so be it. The wedding was something straight out of a fairy tale, or so I thought. I pulled out all the stops to make sure it was an event that would make Martha and John happy, given their traditional views. The church was decked out in flowers, the music was solemn yet uplifting, and I was dressed in a gown that was the very definition of elegance. Even Martha, who could rival a statue when it came to showing emotions, shed a few tears during the ceremony. But, of course, there was a catch. My friends, who'd been my rock through this whole ordeal, came dressed to kill. They looked amazing, but apparently, their style was a bit too much for Martha. "Did you see how they're dressed?" she whispered to me, right in the middle of the reception. "It's a wedding, not a nightclub." I could feel my cheeks burning, not sure if it was from anger or embarrassment. "Martha, they're my friends. They're here to celebrate with us. Can we just focus on that?" She clucked her tongue, shaking her head like I'd just failed the world's easiest test. "I'm just saying. A little modesty wouldn't hurt." After we caved and got hitched, Martha and John must have thought they snagged an all-access pass to our place. No kidding, they started popping by every single day. If you ever needed a live demo of what too much looks like, this was it. One Saturday morning, there's a knock that could wake the dead. I'm talking 6 a.m., and these two are at our door like they're about to miss a flight. Ethan, barely awake, trudges to the door, and there they are, bright and chipper. "Good morning. We thought we'd spend the day together." Martha chirps, pushing past Ethan like it's the most normal thing in the world. I'm in the kitchen, drowning my sorrows in coffee, when John starts critiquing my choice of breakfast. "You know, a hearty breakfast is important. Is this even food?" He's eyeballing my cereal like it's from another planet. "Eggs and bacon were fine for you, right?" I mutter under my breath, not in the mood to start my day off with a lecture on nutritional values. Then, Martha, bless her heart, decides to give me a rundown on cleanliness. "Ava, dear, have you considered organizing your cupboards a bit more? And maybe using some coasters? Water rings on the table are such an eyesore." I'm biting my tongue so hard it's a miracle I still have it. Ethan sees me clenching my fists and jumps in. "Mom, Dad, you know, we really appreciate your visits, but maybe we could do with a bit of space?" You'd think he'd ask them to move to Mars by the looks on their faces. "Space? But we're family. We just want to be close to you too," John says, utterly baffled by the concept of personal boundaries. Martha's on the verge of tears now, playing the guilt card like a pro. "Do you not want us here? After everything we've done for you?" It's like walking on eggshells. You try to set some ground rules, and suddenly you're the villain in their soap opera. I hit my breaking point on a Thursday evening, the kind that started with the same old surprise visit from Martha and John and ended with me locking myself in the bathroom, just to get a minute of peace. "This has got to stop," I muttered to Ethan as we lay in bed, the moon casting a soft glow through our window. "Your folks are driving me nuts. It's like we're living in a reality show, but there's no escaping the cameras." Ethan, looking as worn out as I felt, let out a long sigh. "I know, babe. It's getting to me too. What do we do, though? They're my parents." But this is our home. We can't keep living like this," I shot back, my frustration bubbling over. "We need space. Real space. Maybe we should move. Like, actually move." Ethan propped himself up on one elbow, eyeing me like I'd just suggested we join the circus. "Move? Like, pack up everything and just go?" "Why not?" I was half serious, half desperate. "Your parents can't drop by if we're not here, right? The idea seemed radical, even to me, but the more we talked about it, the less crazy it seemed. We started to imagine a life where dinner wasn't interrupted by unannounced visits or our weekends weren't planned around avoiding his parents. Okay, let's say we do this. Where would we go? Ethan asked, the gears in his head turning. I don't know. Somewhere close enough to keep our jobs but far enough that it's not just a hop, skip, and a jump for your mom and dad, I suggested, warming to the idea. The decision felt right, almost liberating. We started house hunting online, looking for a place that could be our fresh start, far away from unannounced morning visits and constant criticism. It wasn't long before we found it, a cozy little house in a neighboring city. It was perfect, and the best part? I could buy it with the money I'd inherited from my grandmother. This wasn't just a new house, it was a statement. My money, my rules. A fresh slate on our terms. They're going to flip, Ethan said, dreading the conversation. Mom's going to think we're abandoning them. Maybe, I conceded, but we're not doing this to hurt them. We're doing it for us, for our sanity. They'll just have to understand. The conversation went as well as we'd feared. There were tears, accusations, and a lot of guilt being thrown around. But we stood our ground, knowing this was the right move for us. We did it, I said to Ethan as we signed the papers, the weight of the world lifting off our shoulders. The move was hectic, filled with boxes and goodbyes, and the promise of peace. We kept our jobs, commuting a bit further than before, but every mile was worth it for the tranquility that greeted us at the end of the day. Our new life in the neighboring city was everything we'd hoped for. We fell back into our old rhythms, enjoying the quiet and the privacy we'd missed so much. The in-laws? We kept in touch through the internet, a safe buffer that allowed us to control the narrative and the visits. It was a compromise, but a necessary one. Our calls were polite, the conversations brief and infrequent, but it was enough to keep the peace. Just when Ethan and I thought we'd found our slice of peace in the new city, life decided to throw us a curveball. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind where you just want to laze around and enjoy the calm. That's when the doorbell rang, shattering the silence. Who could that be? I murmured, not expecting anyone. We weren't exactly social butterflies, especially not here, not yet. Ethan shrugged, equally puzzled, and strolled over to the door. When he opened it, his puzzled look morphed into outright disbelief. There, on our doorstep, stood Martha and John, each with a suitcase bigger than the last time they'd criticized our breakfast choices. Surprise! Martha exclaimed, her smile wide enough to split her face. John just nodded, his usual taciturn self, but even he seemed to wear a small grin. What are? How did you? Why? Ethan's eloquence was gone, replaced by staccato confusion. We've decided to move in. Martha declared as if announcing they'd won the lottery. It's time we all lived together, as a family should. My mind raced. This had to be a joke, a very bad one. Move in? With us? I echoed, hoping I'd misunderstood. Yes, dear. We sold our house. We're here to stay, Martha said, pushing past Ethan, making herself at home as if she hadn't just dropped a bombshell on our doorstep. Ethan and I exchanged a look of sheer panic. You can't just decide to move in with us, I managed to say, finally finding his voice. Martha and John weren't just shocked at our refusal, they were outraged. You can't possibly expect us to leave. We're family, and this house, it's as much our son's as it is yours, Martha asserted, her voice a mix of indignation and disbelief. John, usually more reserved, joined in with a surprising fierceness. Exactly. Ethan's our son, and you're living here, thanks to him. You're just a freeloader, making decisions that aren't yours to make. I could barely contain my laughter, not because it was funny, but because of the sheer audacity. Ethan's face was a picture of shock, turning to me with wide eyes as if to say, "Are they serious?" Hold on a minute, I said, still chuckling as I went to retrieve a folder from our home office. I flipped it open to a very important document, the deed to the house. I made sure they could see it clearly. See this? This house was bought with the money I inherited from my grandmother. I am the sole owner. So, actually, it's entirely up to me who lives here. And you, I pointed squarely at Martha and John, are not staying. Martha's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, while John's face turned a shade of red I hadn't seen before. Ethan stepped beside me, a proud yet stern look on his face. You heard her. Ava bought this house. Not me, not us, Ava. And we've decided together that moving in uninvited isn't an option. After I dropped the bombshell about owning the house, Martha tried to play her final card, all but declaring squatters' rights on account of Ethan living with me. He's our son. We have every right to be wherever he is. We're family, and that means we stay together, she announced, puffing up like a peacock. I couldn't help it, a laugh escaped me, before I could clamp it down. This was it, the moment I'd been keeping close to the chest for just such an occasion. Well, here's a fun fact for you, I said, the smile on my face growing wider by the second. Ethan and I? We're not actually married. Not legally, anyway. The wedding was for show, to get you off our backs about living in sin. The look on Martha and John's faces? Priceless. Like they'd swallowed lemons whole. What do you mean not married? That whole ceremony. Martha's voice trailed off, her brain unable to compute. Yep, a ceremony without the paperwork. So, technically, you're not my in-laws. And this, I gestured around, is my house. Ethan's just living with me. My rules, my decision who stays and who goes. John's face went through 50 shades of red, anger, and embarrassment battling for dominance. You can't just, that's not how things are done. Ethan stepped up then, his tone steady but firm. Mom, Dad, I love Ava. And I'm tired, so tired, of the way you've treated us, her especially. We did what we had to live our lives on our terms. It's time you went home. Martha, not one to go down without a fight, turned her frustration into a weapon. Ethan, you listen here. You're going to leave this woman, and come with us. She's tricked you, manipulated you. But Ethan was unmovable, a rock in the storm. No, Mom. I'm staying. With Ava. I love her, even if we're not married by your standards. It's my life, our life, and it's time you respected that. The standoff in our living room was tense, a silent battle of wills. But in the end, Martha and John had no choice but to leave, their departure a mix of rage and disbelief. As the door closed behind them, the silence that settled was profound, a mix of relief and the sobering realization of the bridge we'd just burned. Ethan and I looked at each other, a single thought between us, no matter what, we were in this together. After Martha and John huffed out of our place, tails between their legs, word got around through the grapevine that their big move was all a bluff. They never sold their house, it was just a ploy to muscle in on us, thinking they could pull one over and make themselves comfy at our expense. Can you believe that? The nerve of some people. But hey, here we are, still in our own little slice of heaven, shaking our heads at the whole mess. Can you imagine if they actually had sold their house? I said to Ethan one evening, the two of us sprawled out on the couch, enjoying the peace and quiet. Ethan chuckled, a deep, hearty sound that filled the room. That would have been a disaster. Good thing they're too attached to their precious home to actually go through with it. We got to talking about the future, just the two of us, figuring out where we go from here. So, what do you think about making it official, after if we're lucky enough to have a kid? Ethan asked, a bit hesitantly. I thought about it, turning the idea over in my mind. I guess. Might make things simpler, paperwork-wise. But I don't need a piece of paper to tell me I'm yours. Yes, I feel the same. It's just us, Ava. Always has been, always will be. Screw anyone who thinks they can dictate how we live our lives, Ethan said, his voice firm with conviction. It was settled then. We'd cross that bridge when we came to it, but for now, we were content. Just Ava and Ethan against the world, no legal documents needed to validate what we had. Our love was the real deal, stamps in the passports or not. And as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, that feeling of us against the world only grew stronger. We were a team, and nothing, not even sneaky in-laws with their bizarre schemes, could tear us apart. As for Martha and John, well, they kept their distance. Maybe they learned their lesson, maybe not. But one thing was for sure, Ethan and I were untouchable, living our lives on our own terms, in our own time. The future looked bright from where we were sitting, a blank canvas ready to be filled with love, laughter, and maybe, just maybe, the pitter-patter of tiny feet. But until then, we were just fine enjoying the peace, thankful for every quiet moment we had together in our little sanctuary. Living at home with my folks till I was 25 wasn't something I planned out like some strategy, it just felt right, you know? We were tight, like, really tight. Some folks get antsy to bolt the moment they hit 18, but not me. My parents' place was more than just a house, it was home in the realest sense. Didn't see much point in changing that. Then, life threw a curveball. Losing them both to the pandemic felt like someone ripped the ground right out from under me. Suddenly, I was staring at this gaping hole in my life, trying to figure out what comes next. They left me enough money to coast for a while, but the thought of just living off their hard work felt off. It didn't sit right with me. So, I made up my mind to pull myself together. Wasn't easy, I'll tell you that. The whole idea of diving into the job market, of being truly on my own for the first time, was daunting. But the alternative? Living in a bubble, pretending I didn't need to grow up. That wasn't an option. Not anymore. Finding a job wasn't a walk in the park, either. Ended up landing a gig as a manager at this trading company. The work was a whole new world for me, but I dug my heels in, determined to make it work. Gotta start somewhere, I told myself, over and over. I remember running into an old friend from school, Jake, while I was out grabbing lunch one day. He spotted me first. "Hey, isn't that the homebird, Emily? Still living in your folks' nest?" he teased, a smirk playing on his lips. His words stung, more than I wanted to admit. I squared my shoulders, facing him head-on. "Actually, Jake, I'm managing on my own now. Got a job and everything," I shot back, the words laced with a mix of pride and defiance. "Oh, look at you, all grown up and independent. Never thought I'd see the day," he laughed, but there was no real warmth in it. "Yeah, well, people change. Things happen. You learn to stand on your own 2 feet," I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. The conversation felt like walking through a minefield, each word carefully chosen, but loaded. Jake shrugged, the conversation clearly not going the way he expected. "Fair enough. Good for you, Emily. Really." We parted ways shortly after, the encounter leaving a sour taste in my mouth. It was a reminder of how far I'd come, sure, but also of how much further I had to go. That night, as I sat alone in the quiet of the house that used to be filled with my parents' laughter, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. There was fear, yeah, but also a budding sense of determination. I was on a path they'd never get to see, forging a new life from the remnants of the old. The chill in the air wasn't just from the December cold, it was my first holiday season without my folks. The Christmas sale crowd was a mix of frantic and festive, a sharp contrast to my own numb wandering. That's when I bumped into him, literally. "Ouch. Watch it," I started, more out of surprise than pain. Sorry, my fault entirely," he replied, catching a box of Christmas ornaments before it hit the ground. "This crowd is wild, huh?" He was about my age, with a look of earnest concern that quickly changed to a sheepish grin. "I'm Alex," he said, extending a hand not holding runaway Christmas decor. "Emily," I responded, taking his hand briefly. "Yeah, it's madness. Christmas shopping always turns into a contact sport." Alex laughed, and it was an easy, genuine sound. You're not wrong. I'm just trying to find something for my mom. She loves these handmade ornaments, but I'm clueless. Looking at the box he almost dropped, I picked one up. These are nice. Look, this one's got intricate designs. Bet she'd love it. We moved through the stalls together, talking about everything and nothing. Alex was easy to talk to, a breath of fresh air in the midst of holiday chaos. So, Emily, what brings you here? Looking for anything in particular? He asked, as we paused by a stall selling handmade scarves. Just trying to feel, I don't know, festive, I guess? My parents, well, it's just me now. Holidays feel different, I confessed, surprised at my own honesty. Alex's expression softened. I get that. Holidays, they can be tough. But hey, we find new ways to make them ours, right? Yeah, right. I agreed, finding comfort in his understanding. We ended up spending the afternoon together, finding gifts and sharing stories. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows between the stalls, Alex turned to me. Hey, Emily, would you maybe want to grab a coffee? As a thank you for helping me survive this shopping ordeal and, well, for the company, he suggested, hopeful but clearly trying to play it cool. I thought about it. My instinct was to retreat, to go back to my quiet, solitary world. But something about Alex, his easy kindness, and his understanding, made me want to say yes. Sure, Alex. I'd like that. Coffee sounds perfect, I replied, feeling a spark of something warm in the cold evening air. As we walked toward the nearest cafe, I couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, this Christmas would mark the beginning of something new. Not just surviving, but maybe starting to live again. A couple of months down the line, Alex decided it was high time I met his folks. I was a bundle of nerves, hoping to make a good impression. Their welcome was polite, but I could feel the chill through their smiles. We were barely through the door when the questioning started. It was like stepping into the ring, except I wasn't prepared for this kind of bout. So, dear, Alex tells us you lost your parents recently. That must have been tough, his mom began, her tone soft but probing. Yeah, it was a rough patch. Still is, sometimes, I admitted, fidgeting with the hem of my shirt. The conversation felt too personal, too soon. And what about work? Alex mentioned you're in trading? How's that treating you? His dad chimed in, his curiosity not quite matching the warmth supposed to accompany such questions. It's going good. Keeps me on my toes, I responded, trying to keep the unease out of my voice. Must be quite the lucrative field, eh? What kind of figures are we talking about? His mom's question hit me like a cold splash, too forward, too soon. I glanced at Alex, hoping he'd throw me a lifeline. The look on my face must have said it all, because he quickly jumped in. Mom, Dad, come on, let's not grill her about money. That's not important, Alex said, his tone firm yet respectful. I could have hugged him right then. Despite his intervention, the evening carried an undercurrent of unease. After we left, I couldn't shake the feeling that I hadn't measured up to their expectations. In the car, the silence was heavy until I couldn't take it anymore. Alex, do you think your parents didn't like me? The words tumbled out, laced with worry. Alex took my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Hey, don't worry about it. They're just protective, you know? Give it some time. They'll see how amazing you are, just like I do. His words were meant to comfort, and a part of me wanted to believe him. But the doubt lingered, a shadow on what should have been a straightforward step forward in our relationship. Settling into married life at my place was like a dream for the first 6 months. Me and Alex, we were in our little bubble of happiness. Sure, his mom, Mrs. Thompson, didn't exactly warm up to me, always poking at my cooking, my cleaning, even how I dressed. But since they lived a good drive away, those jabs were few and far between. We managed. Then one evening, Alex came home looking like he'd lost his best friend. Babe, I've got to head out of town for work. 2 whole months, he said, barely meeting my eyes. My heart sank. 2 months? That's ages, Alex. What about us? He ran a hand through his hair, stress written all over his face. I know. It's the last thing I want, but I don't have a choice. And there's more, my mom's in the hospital. Heart problems. Hearing that about Mrs. Thompson, despite our rocky relationship, I couldn't help but feel worried. Oh, Alex, I'm so sorry. Is she okay? They're not sure yet. She might need surgery, he replied, his voice cracking a bit. Without a second thought, I said, I'll look after her while you're gone. She'll need someone, right? Alex looked at me, a mix of surprise and gratitude in his eyes. You'd do that? After everything? I nodded. Of course. She's your mom. The next day, I took a day off and headed to his parents' place. Mrs. Thompson was already home from the clinic, looking frail but stubborn as ever. Emily, what are you doing here? She asked, eyeing me like I might steal the silver. I'm here to help out. Alex is worried about you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She huffed, settling back into her chair. Well, I don't need babysitting, especially not by you. I bit back a sharper reply. I know you don't. But I'm here to help, with cooking, cleaning, whatever you need. Mrs. Thompson squinted at me, as if trying to figure out my angle. Fine. But I like my meals on time and my house spotless. And don't think you can dress like a slob here. I forced a smile. Understood. Those weeks turned into a trial by fire. I cooked, cleaned, and did my best to keep things running smoothly, all under Mrs. Thompson's critical eye. Every dish I made was either too salty or too bland, every room I cleaned missed some speck of dust only she could see. One evening, as I was scrubbing the kitchen counter for what felt like the 10th time, she walked in, watching me like a hawk. You missed a spot, she said, pointing to a corner so far back it would require me to grow an extra arm to reach it without moving everything off the counter. Mrs. Thompson, I'm doing the best I can, I said, my patience wearing thin. She snorted. Clearly, your best isn't good enough. I took a deep breath, counting to 10 in my head. Alex was counting on me, and I wasn't about to let him down, no matter how much his mother pushed my buttons. Is there anything else you need before I go to bed? I asked, keeping my tone polite. Just make sure you're up early to start breakfast. And try not to burn the eggs this time, she replied, turning on her heel and leaving me to my thoughts. Life at my in-laws became more of a boot camp than a recovery ward pretty fast. Every day, it was like waking up to a new list of demands from my mother-in-law. And every evening, I juggled my job and her endless requests that just piled up, one on top of the other. Can you fetch me the remote? It's just there on the coffee table, Mrs. Thompson would say, pointing at an object mere inches from her hand. The first few times, I didn't mind. But then, it became a routine, her asking for things she clearly could get herself. Cooking dinner turned into a tactical mission, trying to remember all of her dietary whims. I only eat organic greens, you know. And the chicken needs to be cooked just so, she'd instruct, her voice carrying that tone that said any deviation would be unacceptable. Evenings, the only time I could catch my breath, were hijacked by the blaring TV. Mr. Thompson had a thing for action movies, the louder, the better. There I was, exhausted, trying to find some peace, but instead, getting a front row seat to explosions and car chases. You know, Emily, ever since you married my son, my health has just gone downhill, Mrs. Thompson threw at me one evening, out of nowhere. Her words stung, especially since I was bending over backward, trying to make her life easier. I tried to keep my cool, but it was getting tougher. I'm really trying my best here, Mrs. Thompson. I don't see how my being with your son is causing your health issues. Her lips pursed into a thin line, clearly displeased. Well, if you can't see it, I'm not sure how much help you are here. I was at my wit's end, dreaming of my own bed, my own kitchen, my sanctuary. But then, Alex called. Babe, I'm so sorry, but I'm stuck here for another 2 months. The project's just not wrapping up as we expected. Hearing his voice, tired and strained, I wanted to be strong, to not add to his stress. It's okay, Alex. We'll manage somehow, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Are you sure? Mom's not giving you a hard time, is she? He asked, worry creeping into his voice. I paused, not wanting to worry him, but honesty won out. It's been challenging. But I'm handling it. Focus on your work, love. We'll sort this out when you get back. After hanging up, I realized this was my battle to fight, at least for now. Mrs. Thompson and her demands, the never-ending noise, the blame, it was all on me to bear. But I couldn't help but wonder, how much longer could I keep this up? The strain at home hit a peak when Mrs. Thompson had another heart scare and ended up needing surgery. It was serious enough that I called Alex in a panic, and he rushed back home. Seeing him was a relief, but it was short-lived because work pulled him away again. After the surgery, things at home didn't get any easier. Mrs. Thompson came back needing more care than before. It was like looking after a child. She wanted help with everything, eating, dressing, you name it. And Mr. Thompson? He was no help at all. Instead of appreciating the effort, he complained, "You're always out. I end up cooking for both of us. What are we, chopped liver?" Then, Mrs. Thompson started with her threats, saying she'd tell Alex I was neglecting her, hinting he should leave me. He'll listen to his mother. You'll see, she'd hiss, as if I wasn't already stretched to my limit. My patience was wearing thin, like an old pair of jeans about to tear at the seams. Mrs. Thompson's demands grew by the day, each one more unreasonable than the last. It felt like I was living in a pressure cooker, waiting for the whistle to blow. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I came home to find Mrs. Thompson in the living room, a scowl set deep on her face. "Where have you been? I've been waiting for you to start dinner," she snapped as soon as I walked through the door. "I had to stay late at work, Mrs. Thompson. I'm sorry." "I'll start on dinner right away," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite my frustration. "And make sure it's edible this time." "Last night's dinner was a disaster," she retorted, turning her attention back to the TV, which was, as usual, blaring at an ear-splitting volume. I wanted to scream, to let out all the frustration and exhaustion I'd been bottling up inside. Instead, I took a deep breath and walked into the kitchen, my hands trembling slightly as I began to prepare dinner. 2 weeks passed like that, and my obnoxious ward should have fully recovered by now. However, Mrs. Thompson remained weak. One day I got off work early. I was tiptoeing into the house, hoping for a quiet afternoon, but what I found was anything but. There was my mother-in-law, lively as can be, chattering away on the phone like she was at some high tea party. Yeah, I've got her wrapped around my finger. Just a little act here and there, and she jumps. Does everything for me. Even the little things I can do myself, she boasted to her friend, her laughter echoing off the walls. I stood there, frozen, key still in hand. The realization hit me like a truck. All this time, her needing help, her pain, a good chunk of it was just an act. A manipulative play to have me wait on her hand and foot. The anger bubbled up inside me, hot and fierce. I stepped into the room, unable to hold back. Really, now? Is that how it is? Putting on a show so I do more for you? I confronted her, my voice hard, the words tumbling out. She turned, the phone still clutched to her ear, her face a mix of shock and guilt. For a moment, she looked like she was caught in the headlights, then, quick as a flash, her demeanor changed. "Oh, you're home. Look at the time," she said into the phone, brushing off our confrontation like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. This was a game changer. I realized then that no matter what I did, it would never be enough. Not because I wasn't doing it right, but because the goalposts were always moving. "I can't believe you," I finally said, the disappointment heavy in my voice. "I've been breaking my back for you, and this is how you repay me? By lying? By manipulating?" Her response was cold, calculated. I'm just making sure you're doing your part. After all, you married into this family. It's your duty. I didn't want to fight, but I couldn't let this go. I've had it, Mrs. Thompson. I'm leaving this house, I said, my resolve hardening. Before I knew it, she was on her feet, fury in her steps as she snatched my phone from the kitchen counter. She stormed outside, and I followed, only to watch in disbelief as she threw it under the car, smashing it. Let's see you call for help now, she sneered, her actions betraying her desperation. I felt a mix of anger and sadness, not just for the phone, but for the sheer breakdown of respect. I started gathering my things, determined to leave. But she wasn't done. She followed, throwing my clothes and personal items out after me, shouting insults that stung deeper than the cold air. You're nothing. You don't deserve to be part of this family. I was outside, picking up my things, and trying to hold back tears when Alex arrived. The sight of his car was both a relief and a harbinger of the confrontation to come. What's going on here? Alex demanded, his eyes darting between his mother standing at the doorway and me, a mess on the driveway. She's crazy, Alex. She's been lying about how sick she is. And now this. I gestured to the scattered belongings and my destroyed phone. His gaze shifted to his mother, searching for a denial that didn't come. Mom? Is this true? Mrs. Thompson's facade crumbled, but her defiance didn't. She was never good enough for you, never good enough for our family. Walking into his parents' house, Alex was a storm dressed in human skin. His face was set, his jaw tight, ready to confront the hurricane his parents had brewed. I can't believe what I've been hearing and seeing. How could you? Alex started, his voice heavy with disappointment and anger. His mom, Mrs. Thompson, shot back. Oh, now you're going to believe her over your own mother? She's turned you against us, filled your head with lies. That's enough, Mom. Alex's voice cut through her accusations like a knife. I've seen the videos. I've heard the recordings. I've heard enough of your words about her. There's no denying what you've done. The color drained from Mrs. Thompson's face as realization sank in. Her bravado faltered, her usual sharp tongue suddenly heavy in her mouth. And you, Alex turned to his father, you just stood by? You let this happen? Mr. Thompson shifted uncomfortably, the guilt evident in his avoidance to meet his son's gaze. Alex continued, his disappointment unwavering. Did you know that she sold her parents' house to pay for your wife's operation? Because the insurance wouldn't cover it all? We were planning to build a new house, a place where we could all live together. But not anymore. The room went silent, the weight of Alex's words pressing down on everyone. Mrs. Thompson, tears streaming down her face, reached out. Please, I didn't know. I can change. We can forget all this happened. But Alex was resolute. It's too late for that. You've shown us who you really are. We're done here. I'm done. Mr. Thompson, realizing the magnitude of their loss, turned to his wife with a look of betrayal. You foolish woman. You've ruined everything. As Alex and I walked out to the car, the finality of the situation settled in. We were leaving behind more than just a house, we were severing ties with a part of our lives that had turned toxic. Sitting in the car, about to start a new chapter, Alex took my hand. I'm sorry it had to be this way. But we're going to start fresh, just the two of us. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. Together, I affirmed, squeezing his hand back. We drove off, leaving behind the chaos, ready to build a new life on our terms, grounded in truth and respect, away from the shadows of manipulation and deceit. A month flew by, and finally, our new house was ready, a real beauty, if I do say so myself. Me and Alex, we put our hearts into making it a home, picking out every piece with care, making sure it all felt like us. We hadn't spoken to his folks since that day. Heard through the grapevine that his dad up and left, found someone new, leaving Mrs. Thompson to fend for herself in some small apartment. She tried reaching out, wanted to patch things up, but for us, that ship had sailed. Some wounds are too deep for sorries to heal. One evening, as we settled into our new living room, surrounded by boxes yet to be unpacked, Alex looked over at me with a smile that always made my heart skip. "So, babe, how do you feel about starting a family here?" he asked, his voice casual, but eyes filled with hope. I paused, the question hanging in the air like a promise. "A baby, here, with you? That sounds like the dream, Alex." He reached for my hand, his touch grounding. "I think we're ready to make new memories, good ones, in this place we built together." I nodded, the future suddenly blooming before us, filled with possibilities. "It'll be amazing. Our own little family." "Yeah," Alex agreed, a softness in his voice. "Our own fresh start, away from all the drama. Just us and a new beginning." As we sat there, planning for a future filled with laughter and love, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. Despite the rocky road that led us here, we were building something beautiful on our own terms. It all started in a way that you'd least expect. My name's Olivia, and I was just another face in the corporate world, grinding away my days until Jack walked into my life. He was a client for the firm I worked at, and our first meeting was anything but ordinary. There was this spark, an instant click, something that made the air crackle with energy whenever we were in the same room. "Olivia, right? Heard you're the wizard with numbers around here," Jack said on the day we met, his voice laced with a grin that I could hear before I saw it. "Wizard might be stretching it, but I know my way around them," I replied, trying to keep my composure. Who was this guy, coming in and throwing words like wizard around? Our conversations quickly moved from strictly business to personal interests, dreams, and eventually, our views on life. It was like finding a piece of myself that I didn't know was missing. Jack was charming, not just in a smooth talker kind of way, but genuinely caring. He listened, really listened, and that was rare. We started seeing each other outside of work, and each date felt like we were peeling back layers, revealing more and more of ourselves. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. "I can't believe you actually enjoy pineapple on pizza," I teased during one of our dinner dates. "Hey, don't knock it till you try it. It's the perfect combo of sweet and savory," Jack defended, his eyes lighting up with the kind of passion people reserve for sports teams or favorite bands. "That sounds like something only a madman would say," I shot back, laughter bubbling up from the pit of my stomach. Jack's laugh joined mine, filling the space around us with warmth. Those moments felt like we were in our little world, far away from the prying eyes and expectations of reality. 6 months flew by in a blur of shared smiles, whispered secrets, and dreams laid bare. Then, almost impulsively, Jack proposed. It was messy, unplanned, and in the middle of our favorite dive bar. No grand gestures or hidden photographers, just raw emotion. "Olivia, I know this isn't fancy. I don't have a ring yet, and we're surrounded by the smell of stale beer, but I can't imagine my life without you in it. Marry me?" His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. In that moment, I realized how deeply I had fallen. "Yes, but if we're doing this, we're doing it our way. No fuss, just us." Our marriage was quick, just like our decision. We didn't need a big wedding. All that mattered was the promise we made to each other. We moved into Jack's place, a cozy little house that suddenly felt like home because we were together. Life with Jack was like living in a bubble, perfect and undisturbed, until Linda, his mom, decided it was her mission to burst it. Living next door, she had this uncanny timing of showing up right when we least expected or wanted her to. One lazy Sunday afternoon, as Jack and I were lounging on the couch, there was a knock on the door. Before we could even pretend we weren't home, Linda barged in like a hurricane on a mission. "Olivia, darling, how are you?" she bellowed, her voice carrying that peculiar mix of concern and accusation. "I'm good, Linda. Just enjoying the weekend," I replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Enjoying, huh? You know what would make weekends better? A grandchild running around," she shot back, her eyes darting between Jack and me, as if her mere gaze could impregnate me. Jack, ever the peacemaker, tried to lighten the mood. "Mom, we've talked about this. We're not in a rush." Linda wasn't having any of it. "Not in a rush? I had Jack when I was your age, Olivia. The clock is ticking, you know." Her words hung in the air, a constant reminder of the pressure she was piling on us. It wasn't just the occasional comments anymore, it was every single visit. Dinners were marred by her pointed questions and comparisons to her friends' children, who were apparently popping out grandchildren left, right, and center. One evening, she overstepped more than usual. We were at her place for what was supposed to be a peaceful dinner. The main course wasn't the only thing served. Linda dished out her ultimatum as well. "Olivia, I've been patient, but I need to know. Are you even capable of giving me grandchildren?" Linda's voice was sharp, each word slicing through the pretense of a familial meal. I was taken aback, anger boiling in my veins. "Linda, that's way out of line. We'll have kids when and if we want to. And when we're ready, not because you're demanding it." Jack finally found his voice, though it was softer than I'd hoped. "Mom, Olivia's right. This isn't just about what you want." But Linda was relentless. "Fine, if you won't do it for me, do it for yourselves. But I want you to get checked out. I need to know the problem isn't from your side." The nerve of her, as if bearing children was some family duty I was failing at. Jack looked at me, his eyes apologetic. "Maybe you should, Liv. Just to get her off our backs." I agreed, but on one condition. "Fine, but you're getting checked too, Jack. Fair's fair." Okay. Anything for peace," he conceded, though I could tell he was just as annoyed. The whole ordeal of getting tested was humiliating and invasive, not to mention completely unnecessary in my eyes. But it turned out to be an eye-opener in ways we hadn't anticipated. Jack's results came back, and the irony of the situation wasn't lost on us. The issue Linda was so concerned about, the delay in expanding our little family, stemmed from her precious son. The aftermath was a blend of vindication and sorrow. I wasn't sure how to feel. I wanted to rage at Linda, to throw her words back in her face, but I also saw the man I loved crumbling under the weight of his own imperfections. Linda's reaction was predictably unsupportive. Instead of rallying around her son, she doubled down on her blame game, pointing fingers at me for not being understanding enough, for not caring for Jack in his time of need. And Jack? Well, he wasn't the same. The light in his eyes dimmed, replaced by shadows of doubt and shame. He retreated into himself, leaving me to fend off Linda's barbs alone. Jack's struggle with the news about his fertility hit him harder than a freight train. Instead of facing it head-on, he looked for escape in booze, letting the bottles drown out his sorrows and shame. Nights turned into a blur, with him either passed out or staring into nothing, a whiskey bottle his only company. One evening, I couldn't just watch him spiral anymore. "Jack, this ain't the way, you know. We gotta face this thing together, not let it tear us apart," I said, my voice a mix of frustration and worry. He just scoffed, the smell of alcohol heavy in his words. "Face what, Olivia? That I'm a failure? That I can't give you kids? What's the damn point?" "It's not about that, Jack. It's about us, finding a way through. The doctors said it was unlikely, not impossible. Maybe see other doctors, explore other options." I tried to get through to him, but it was like talking to a wall. "Other options? You mean raising some other guy's kid? That ain't gonna be my child, Olivia. How am I supposed to live with that?" His words were like daggers, but I knew it was the booze and pain talking. "Any child we raise would be ours, Jack. Ours. It doesn't matter how they come to us," I countered, but it was like I was speaking a foreign language to him. He just shook his head, sinking further into the couch and his despair. "You don't get it, Liv. You'll never get it." That night was just the start. Jack began blowing off work, first with sick calls, then not even bothering. His job, once his pride, now seemed like just another burden. Linda, his mom, only added fuel to the fire. Olivia's not doing enough for you, Jack. A real wife would have you out of this slump, she accused one day, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I had enough and shot back. Doing enough? I'm trying to keep us afloat here, Linda. But he needs more than just me yelling at him. He needs help, real help, not just your complaints. Linda glared at me, her voice icy. My son doesn't need some shrink. He needs his family. And a wife who's actually there for him. Her words stung, but I knew standing by Jack was all I was doing, even as he slipped further away, becoming a ghost in his own life. I tried again one night, the silence heavy between us. Jack, we can't go on like this. I can't watch you tear yourself apart. I love you, damn it. For a moment, there was a glimmer of the old Jack in his eyes. I don't know how to stop this, Liv. I'm lost. It was a crack in his armor, but promises made in desperation are fragile. And as time went on, the depth of Jack's descent became painfully clear. The last straw was his job. They fired him for showing up drunk, if he showed up at all. After that, he just lay on the couch all day, a shell of the man I married. Whenever I tried to reach out, to pull him back, he'd just head to Linda's, seeking refuge in the one place that never seemed to help. Days blurred into each other, each one a repeat of the last, Jack on the couch, lost in his own misery, and me, juggling 2 jobs just to keep us afloat. It felt like we were stuck in a never-ending storm with no way out. But then, something changed. It was a regular Thursday evening when I found out. I'd been feeling off for a while, sick in the mornings, and just not myself. On a whim, I picked up a pregnancy test. I remember standing in our cramped bathroom, waiting for the result, my heart hammering in my chest. When the positive sign showed up, I couldn't believe it. I was pregnant. I remember the moment I decided to tell Jack. He was on the couch, staring off into nothing, a half-empty bottle of beer in his hand. My heart was hammering in my chest, but I had this crazy hope that maybe, just maybe, this news would snap him out of whatever hole he'd fallen into. Jack, I have something to tell you. I'm pregnant, I said, the words feeling both heavy and light at the same time. Jack's reaction was nothing like I'd hoped. He looked at me like I'd slapped him. Pregnant? How the hell is that possible? You know what the doctor said about me. I tried to keep my voice steady, to explain the situation calmly. Jack, the doctor said it was unlikely, not impossible. This baby is ours. But Jack wasn't having any of it. He got up, his anger palpable. Ours? Don't give me that crap, Olivia. You've been cheating on me, haven't you? That's the only way this makes sense. Before I could even process what he was saying, Linda barged in, her timing as impeccable as ever. What's all this shouting about? She demanded. Jack was quick to fill her in, his words twisted by bitterness. Olivia's pregnant. Claims it's mine, but we both know that's a lie. Linda turned on me, her eyes flashing with accusation. You ungrateful little. After everything we've done for you, you go and betray my son like this? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Betray him? Linda, I'd been here, trying to make things work, even when Jack gave up. This baby is his, whether you like it or not. The argument spiraled from there, with both of them hurling accusations and demands. Linda, in her infinite wisdom, decided I should leave. Get out of this house, Olivia. We don't need a liar and a cheat under this roof. I was so tired of the fighting, the accusations, the endless cycle of despair. So, I agreed. Fine. I'll go. But not for you. For this baby, who deserves better than this mess. Jack didn't stop me. He didn't say a word as I walked out the door, my heart heavy, but my resolve strong. This baby was my glimmer of hope, and I was going to do everything in my power to protect it, to give it the life it deserved. Away from all the chaos, away from a love that had turned so toxic it was unrecognizable. Starting over wasn't easy, not by a long shot. There I was, pregnant, alone, and frankly, a bit scared. But there was this fire in me, too, a determination to make things right for the little one growing inside me. I moved into a small, cozy apartment. It wasn't much, but it was ours, mine and the baby's. I picked up extra shifts at work, anything to make sure we'd have what we needed. Nights were the hardest, though. It was just me and my thoughts, and sometimes, the silence was too loud. One evening, after a long day at work, I sat on the worn-out sofa, rubbing my belly, talking to the baby. "It's just you and me, kiddo. But we're gonna make it, you'll see. I'm gonna make sure of it." That's when the phone rang. It was my sister, Lucy. She'd been my rock through all of this. "Hey, Liv. How are you holding up?" Lucy's voice was always a balm, soothing and warm. "We're hanging in there. Some days are better than others," I admitted, not wanting to worry her too much. "Listen, Liv, you're not alone in this. Remember that. If you need anything, a break, someone to talk to, or just a night off from cooking, you call me, okay?" Her words meant the world to me. "Thanks, Luce. I really appreciate it." We talked a bit more about nothing in particular. Lucy always had a way of making me laugh, even when I felt like crying. After hanging up, I felt a little lighter, a bit more ready to face the world. As the weeks turned into months, I got to know every inch of that little apartment. I decorated a corner for the baby, putting together a makeshift nursery. It wasn't much, but it was filled with love. As my due date approached, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. I was about to meet my baby, to start this new chapter for real. And even though I was doing it on my own, I knew we'd be okay. Life as a single mom had its set of challenges, but me and my little boy, Max, we were doing all right. He was growing up fast, all smiles and curiosity, making all the tough times worth it. Then, one day, life decided to throw us another curveball. I was at the park with Max, pushing him on the swings, when I ran into a face from the past, Tina, an old friend of Jack's. Her expression was a mix of surprise and something else, maybe pity, when she saw us. "Olivia? Wow, it's been ages. How are you holding up?" Her voice was cautious, like she was walking on eggshells. "We're managing, thanks. Max keeps me on my toes," I said, trying to keep the conversation light. "Yeah, I heard about, well, everything. I'm sorry, Olivia." For what it's worth, Jack's been going through a rough patch, too. Tina's attempt at being diplomatic was awkward at best. "Oh?" I prompted, not sure I wanted to know but asking anyway. "He got married again. Had another kid, but things didn't go well. There were problems with the baby. He was born, not quite healthy. And then Jack got into trouble for not paying support. It's a mess." Tina's words tumbled out in a rush. Hearing about Jack's troubles stirred up a storm of emotions in me. Part of me felt vindicated, seeing him face consequences for once. But there was no joy in it, especially hearing about another child caught in the middle of his mess. "Life has a way of catching up with you, I guess," I said, my voice neutral. Tina nodded, awkwardly shifting from one foot to the other. "Yeah, it does. Look, Olivia, I know it's none of my business, but, are you alright? After everything?" I looked at Max, who was laughing, urging me to push him higher on the swings. "We're more than alright, Tina. We've moved on. And we're happy, really happy." That night, as I tucked Max into bed, I thought about Jack and his other child. My heart ached for that little one, caught in a situation they didn't choose. I whispered a silent prayer for them, hoping they'd find some peace amidst the chaos. Life with Max was a whirlwind of school runs, soccer games, and endless questions. He was my little man, growing up too fast, and I was doing my best to keep up. Our routine was hectic but happy, until one day, a blast from the past turned our world upside down. It was just another day, me and Max doing our usual grocery run, when out of nowhere, Linda, my ex-mother-in-law, shows up. It was like bumping into a ghost from a past life I'd worked hard to forget. As soon as she saw us, her eyes lit up, especially when they landed on Max. Without a second thought, she swooped in, trying to hug him. Max, who's not used to strangers, especially not her, hid behind me. "Olivia, let me see my grandson. He looks so healthy, not like the other one," Linda said, a twisted sort of pride in her voice that made my skin crawl. "Back off, Linda. You've got no right to come here and make demands. Especially talking like that about a sick child. It's disgusting," I snapped, putting myself between her and Max. She huffed, her face all twisted up in anger. "You can't keep me from him, Olivia. He's my grandson too. I have rights." "Yeah? Well, it's funny you suddenly remember you've got a grandson now. And as for rights, you lost those the minute you sided with Jack, calling me every name under the sun. Forget it. You're not coming anywhere near Max," I shot back, every word laced with years of pent-up frustration. We left her standing there, fuming. But it didn't end at the store. Later that day, she called, her voice all sweet and poisonous at the same time. "Olivia, you're making a mistake. I'll sue if I have to. I want to see my grandson," Linda threatened, thinking she could bully me into submission. I held the phone away from my ear for a moment, taking a deep breath to steady myself. "You really want to go down that road, Linda? Because if we end up in court, I'll make sure everyone knows the kind of person you really are. How you treated me, how you talk about your other grandchild. You think a judge will look kindly on that?" There was silence on the line for a few beats, and I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. "You wouldn't dare," she finally hissed. "Try me, Linda. I've kept my mouth shut for too long. But I'm done playing nice. Max and we're doing just fine without you. So, you go ahead and try your luck in court. We'll see how far it gets you." After a moment, she hung up, and that was the last I heard from her. I wasn't sure if she believed I'd follow through or if the thought of her dirty laundry being aired in public was too much for her. Either way, Max and I were left in peace. As I tucked him into bed that night, I thought about how far we'd come and how much we'd overcome. "Everything's gonna be alright, buddy," I whispered, more to myself than to him. That night, I realized no matter what came our way, we'd face it together, just like we always had. And no one, not even Linda with her threats and bitterness, could take that away from us. Life after Linda's threat had been strangely peaceful. I'd braced for a storm that never came, and in its absence, Max and I found our rhythm again. That peace was shattered when Jack showed up out of the blue. It had been years since I last saw him, and here he was, standing at my door, looking worn and tired. "Olivia, can we talk?" Jack's voice was low, hesitant. I hesitated, my hand on the door, ready to close it on him and this part of my past. "Talk? After all this time, you just show up and want to talk?" I know I've got no right to ask anything of you. But I've been through a lot, and I've changed, Olivia. I need help," he said, a hint of desperation creeping into his voice. "Changed? You think saying you've changed is enough? You walked away, Jack. You chose that path, not me. Max and we've built a life without you. Why should I let you back into it?" Jack looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "I'm not asking to come back like nothing happened. I don't know where else to go." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the shell of the man I once loved. It would have been easy to feel pity, to open the door and let him back in. But life had taught me better. "Jack, you need to understand something. It's not just about me anymore. There's Max to think about. And I won't let anyone hurt him or disrupt the life we have. You say you've changed, but I can't just take your word for it. You need to prove it, not for me, but for yourself." Jack nodded, a semblance of understanding dawning in his eyes. "I get it, Olivia. I really do. I'll try to do better. That's all anyone can ask, Jack. But for now, you need to leave. Max and I have a life, a good one. And I'm not ready to risk that. He took a step back, finally lifting his eyes to meet mine. I understand. Take care of Max, Olivia. He deserves the best. I will, Jack. I always have. Closing the door on Jack was like closing a chapter of my life I never thought I'd revisit. It was hard, but in that moment, I knew I'd made the right decision. Later, as I watched Max play in the backyard, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows over the lawn, I realized how far we'd come. We'd faced down ghosts from our past and stood our ground, stronger and more united than ever. Mom, look, Max called, waving at me from his makeshift fort. I smiled, walking over to him. What is it, buddy? Just wanted to show you the fort. It's our castle, he said, his eyes shining with pride. Our castle, huh? I like the sound of that. It's our little kingdom, and we protect it together, I said, ruffling his hair. Yeah, together, Max agreed, a big grin on his face. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I knew that no matter what the future held, we'd face it head-on, as a team. Our little family of two was a force to be reckoned with, built on love, resilience, and a firm stand against the challenges life threw our way. And that was all we needed.